All the breaking news this morning. What is the stock market going to do because of this? China hitting back at the United States with an added 50% in retaliatory tariffs, bringing that total of tariffs on U.S. imports to 84%. Also setting in as we speak, President Trump's targeted tariffs, which include a combined 104% on Chinese goods. Now, this is rocking global markets, with Americans caught in the middle and staring down a reality that prices on most everything are likely to go up. CNN's Harry Enten is looking at that today and how that makes Americans stuck in the middle feel. How are Americans so far baseline feeling about tariffs at the moment?
They hate them. They hate them, and it's going in the wrong direction. I mean, look at this. Trump's tariff deal. You know, you go back to January, it's 48% who favored, 46% who opposed, so slightly more who favored than opposed. Look at where we are now in April. 54% opposed, 42% favor. Opposition's going up. Favors going down. This, bottom line, is a political loser for Donald Trump, and he is losing the messaging battle on this. Americans might have been a little open to the idea of tariffs coming into this administration, but since then, their opposition through the roof, Kate Baldwin.
We've heard from a lot of people that Donald Trump's supporters, they have more of an appetite to feel pain for longer than maybe when you're looking at the broader electorate. That is, for one thing, that we have definitely heard. On the question, though, that we've heard more and more growing fears that this could all lead to a recession. Some CEOs saying they think we're already in one. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? We've been talking about Wall Street, and we've been talking about whether what happens on Wall Street is an indication of what will happen on Main Street. And take a look here. These are recession chances, chance of a recession, according to JP Morgan. In early March, it was already 40%. Look at where it is now, 60%, a majority. How about Goldman Sachs? In early March, it was 20%. Look at where we are now, 45%. At best case at this point, it seems to me, at least according to the experts, the chance of a recession is 50-50 when you average it all together. What is happening on Wall Street, at least at this particular point, has a pretty good chance of spilling into Main Street, and those folks who are thinking those tariffs are just something that are happening down in the stock exchange in New York City aren't coming to them. They may be in for a rude awakening and a rude surprise, Kate.
The real impact on people's lives is what matters most, but you know also in any White House, one of the things that they have to be worried about is the political impact on the president as well. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, look here. I mean, the economy has traditionally been Donald Trump's strength, right? You go back April of 2017, his net approval rating on the economy was plus 5 points. It was positive pretty much throughout his entire first term. Look at where we are now, minus 12 points. All of a sudden, the strength of Donald Trump has become a weakness of Donald Trump. It's one of his weakest positions. And more than that, at the beginning of this administration, his net approval rating on the economy was plus 6 points, minus 12 points now. It's fallen nearly 20 points over the course of less than 3 months, Kate. Very clear that's a very big drop.
That's real.
That is real. It is very clear that the American people do not like what's going on with this tariff plan, do not like Donald Trump's plans for the economy, and they're taking it out on Donald Trump. And that's why his economic approval rating is falling, and that is why his overall approval rating is also falling. This could be the thing that we look back. Right now, his economic approval rating is swimming with the fishes, so far underwater. Could be that this could take Donald Trump's political career and make it swimming with the fishes as well.
Let's see what happens in the next 24 hours.
We shall see.
Harry, thank you very much.
All crazy.
You know how that worked out for Luca Brasi. With us now, CNN political commentator Sir Michael Singleton, Republican strategist, and Paul Begala, Democratic strategist. Harold, if you can stay at the wall for a second, or Vanna White over there, if you can put the tariff approval numbers back up and the change over time.
We can do that, Mr. Berman.
So, Paul, there's been a big rollout. The president had a big rollout of his tariff plan. He called it Liberation Day.
Right.
Yet, approval going down, opposition going up. What does that tell you about the messaging on the tariffs?
Well, it's the substance, not the messaging.
Okay.
Like the Titanic didn't have a messaging problem, it had an iceberg problem. People just don't want to see their life savings squandered by this guy, by Mr. Trump. $11 trillion in 11 weeks. Okay? He's got about 197 weeks to go. So do the math. It's a reality problem. And these numbers are translating into elections. Okay, yeah, Harry's right. Trump's economic numbers underwater, which is a catastrophe for him. But more immediately, Republicans on the Hill own this. because there's a movement going with Democrats and increasingly a couple of Republicans to claw back the power that the Constitution gave to the Congress to control these tariffs, not to Trump. So every Republican is going to have to vote or declare, I want to take back away from Trump this power of the tariff. And I think Democrats have a huge advantage on that.
You know, Michael, it's interesting because over on Fox, they're even noting that Republican donors are freaking the F out about this. Those were their words. Bill Ackman saying our stock market's down, bond yields are up, the dollar's declining. These are not the markers of successful policy. What starts happening if the donors start freaking out, if the base starts freaking out, if members of Congress start freaking out?
Well, look, I'm not worried about the donors. They're some of the wealthiest people in the country, and a part of the issue, at least that I have with free trade in general, and I've written about this over the years, I don't share the belief of many of my fellow Republicans that free trade is this great benevolent thing. I think you need some level of it, but I also recognize the negative impacts of free trade. I mean, over the past 2.5, 3 decades, give or take, the top wealthiest people in this country have seen their income increase significantly, while everybody else in the middle and the bottom end have seen their numbers decrease. They've gotten poor. Their ability to pay for and afford more things, it hasn't increased. It's gotten worse. And so I think the president needs to be strategic in his methodology here. Let's level set. We have too many trade deficits. Let's figure out how to do that. A lot of countries are now starting to say, hey, we want to negotiate. You need to immediately begin that process. As it pertains to China, who, by the way, we are their #1 trading partner. They steal our intellectual property. There is no recourse for American companies. They build a significant portion of the things that we buy in this country. I don't believe personally that that is a good thing, to be so reliant and beholden to an adversary where if we ever got into a conflict with them, they don't have to ship us anything. And so I do believe that there is some argument for the president to take to, again, make trade fair for the United States and our trading partners. But I think got to be more strategic. I would agree that at some point, even Republicans in the base are going to say, okay, Mr. President, we're with you, but we can only feel the pain for so long. And so I think the onus is on the president there to communicate that to the American people.
You know, some in the base and some in Congress and some investors are saying, make a deal with somebody. Announce a deal with somebody. And Paul, it is a bit of a mystery why the White House hasn't come forward with one of these deals yet. They say that some 70 countries are coming to them. But if they did, if they came today and said, you know what, South Korea's here, we have this deal. Japan is here, we have this deal. Would that be a success?
Well, it would be good, right? We don't want a trade war. But here's the problem Mr. Trump has. One of the few things he did in his first presidency that was great was the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, the USMCA. He just updated NAFTA, made it a more modern, better deal to help create this North American common market that we have. And now he's blown it up. His own trade deal. It's like, dude, who do you think negotiated the Trump USMCA? So who would make a deal with a guy? They're going to have to, okay? But who wants to sit down and make a deal with a guy who can't keep his word? When he gave his word to the Canadians, gave his word to the Mexicans. By the way, one of the only countries he's not slapping new tariffs on, Russia. So he's attacking our best customers, as Michael said. You know, Canada and Mexico together buy from us almost $1 trillion worth of stuff. Russia, $3 billion. Actually, no, $500 million. $500 million from Russia. But they get an escape, and our friends get punished. And there's something going on here that I don't understand.
Sure, Michael, I keep trying to look at stock futures right now. In the screen of my eyes, my aging eyes, there we go. So the S&P down 1.96%. If the market closes at that today, and it was a long way to go. I mean, these are just futures. The market's got to open. But if it closes like the futures are pointing right now, that would be bear market territory. So talk to me about what you think the right messaging is from the Trump White House if the markets close in a bear market, 20% drop from the high.
Yeah, look, the markets like stability. If you're a CEO, you have a board, you have investors, they want to be able to know what are the projections for Q2 going into Q3. It's really difficult to make those projections when there's a trade war essentially going on. And so I think if I were the president, before I began this process, I probably would have focused on some of those corporate tax cuts. That would have been beneficial. I would have brought in all of those CEOs and said, hey, I'm preparing to do this. Go back to your boards and your major investors and tell them start putting some to the side. Be prepared for about 60 days, because that's what I think is going to take to really get the type of agreements that I want. And that way, you're bringing the CEOs, you're bringing these corporations on with you so that they know, okay, that there's stability here. The president's being specific with what he's trying to target in terms of key imports versus just imports all over the place. So we're going to stick with the president for about 60 days or so to allow him to bring to fruition what his plans are. I think if the president would have gone in that route, John, I don't think the market would have reacted as negatively as it has.